But YA also is not a genre. That is an age group that is going to put you in a different category. Gosh, I am tired. Children's books. Children's books also not a genre. That is a category. Thank you. I just said it correctly that time. I'm going to pat myself on the back for
that. Fantastic.
Thank
exactly.
You. Thank
Don't
you
break
so
your
much.
arm. Anyway.
I need those. I need those. Welcome to Pros Talking Pros. We are going to discuss a hot topic, or at least what's hot right now, which is genre and subgenres. We've got some trends that are picking at my brain. And I think, Troy, you sounds like you might have got some research done on that. So I'm kind of excited to see what you came up with. So we're going to talk about this and kind of see if we can help you authors out there kind of figure out why genre is important and kind of how to treat these trends when they come and they go, because they come and they go, and you don't need to worry too much about it. That's the gist of it. But we'll give you some ideas of what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to. Anyway, so welcome. If you haven't already, subscribe. We would love to see you the next time. We're doing much better this go round, Troy, about getting things out consistently.
Yes, indeed.
That's good. So I'm going to start off today because we didn't do this last week, but I would love to see if you've got any news. Have you heard anything? Is there any buzz going on right now? I haven't heard anything more than the usual.
Nothing super out of the ordinary or anything like that. There's some genre trends going on and stuff like that, but the industry itself is going through one. You and I have talked about it. Yeah. It's going through a major shift to what we're calling publishing. Some of us are calling publishing 4.0 or calling essentially it's more of a reader focused thought process when we're marketing books and providing readers with an experience so we can draw people away from places like Amazon and to buy directly from authors or to interact directly with authors. And that involves platforms like Substack and things like that. And so there's some evolution that's happening there as people move away from Amazon. There is a kind of a large boycott of Amazon going on right now among readers, which is impacting some authors' sales. Yeah, this is ongoing. It just started a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually having an impact on some authors' sales. And again, this is why we talk about going wide and selling direct and all those different things. But part of doing that is to provide a better experience for the reader. And so that's partly, there's a lot of talk about that and exactly what that looks like and exactly how that's going to evolve and emerge. And also how to get readers on board with that, because if you're an author, you have to bring your readers in somehow, and bringing them into your own website is a little more challenging than bringing them into Amazon. So it's about creating that email list and that ecosystem. And really, there's a lot of talk about exactly how to do that and how to create these type of communities for readers apart from the big retailers that we've been dependent upon for years. This used to be the way we did things a long time ago, and now it's just shifting back towards that. So that's really the only trend that's happening. It's kind of an ongoing thing. It's evolving constantly. So there's not really like any news per se, just the fact that it's happening. Tap in, pay attention to it, pay attention to the influences that are talking about it, because it's important.
If you want more information, you can always hit up Troy at troylambertwrites.com, or you can hit me up at editsbystacey.com. My course covers a lot of this, and we're ongoing education gurus. So we're going to be, I hate to say that word, but we're working on it. We're giving you guys the information that we get as soon as we get it. Just as far as self-publishing 4.0, I should point this out because it was really kind of a cool little thing I learned about this week is my best friend, her daughter her daughters are all voracious readers, but her 11-year-old, I hope I'm getting her age right. She's 11 and she is really into this series called the Fallen, or The Paradise Planets is the most recent book by Sean Barrows. Anyway, have you heard of this guy? Apparently he's got, do you know him? Are you talking?
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
I was going to say, like, do you,
not
this
my,
is somebody
not
you
my
know?
genre, not my usual circle, but no.
But
I've heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah. His cover is really quite cute for this book. But my best friend's daughter was complaining because she was like, he hasn't released his music yet. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, he has a soundtrack for these are musical books. And I'm like, wait, musical books? So yeah, he writes music that goes with these books, and she's like into it, the soundtrack of these books. So I was like thinking, oh my gosh, he's doing it. He's doing self-publishing 4.0. Like, this is
he's
seriously
going beyond
like,
the book.
He's going beyond the book.
Just on that note, like, I am not a songwriter, but I have written 3 songs lately that go with a short story that I'm writing. It's actually, I think that short story is going to turn into a novella, and that means I'm going to have to write another short story for this anthology I'm working with, which is another way that we're going beyond the book. Is like, through this anthology that we're doing, we're creating a portal for readers to connect with the authors of these stories, and a way for you to support them directly through Kickstarter and stuff like that, and then through book sales, and then through an ongoing community type thing. But going back to the musical thing, it's actually brilliant. People have been creating playlists, but now, because of the various different ways that we can create music, it's possible for us, it's possible for me, who's not a songwriter, but I can write lyrics, to write the lyrics and then to create a package using some AI tools and other things that I can hand to a musician and say, can you produce this song the way with my vision? Because I have a better way to express my vision. And it absolutely is working. It's brilliant. I showed it to a couple of musicians the other day, and they were like, whoa, this is a great idea. And I'm like, you on board? Yes, we're on board. Okay, awesome. Let's get this thing done. So instead of producing just playlists, we're producing albums and things that go with the book, because that gives you more of an experience. And it's going to be one of those things, you're not going to get that album on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's not going to be on Amazon Music. It's not going to be with the book on Amazon. It's going to be by coming to those authors and interacting with them. And, we're not going to be interacting with fans on Amazon because we can't.
You can't.
So
yeah, that's the thing.
The fans will come to us in the places where we are so that we can interact with them.
Exactly.
And so it's a super interesting trend.
I love it.
I'm fascinated by the future of it. And I'm playing with it myself. I'm going beyond the book because this is what I need to do. I'm going beyond the book with the Solitaire series. There's all kinds of things happening there. I'm not going to tell anybody about them yet, but they're coming. There's all kinds of already some animated movie trailers and stuff like that are happening.
Wow. Okay. I'm excited to see all these things. That's awesome. So yeah, it's just fun to see what authors are doing to help create, like you said, that experience. So if you're an author and you're out there and you're trying to drum up excitement and other ways for you to get income streams and build that author platform and business, don't ignore this trend. This is a good trend to tap into. You don't want to miss the boat. Okay, so let's dive into genres and subgenre trends that are happening right now. Let me first reiterate like the importance of genre. A lot of times people get kind of in their heads about how, well, I don't want to be conforming to some rule that you're all creatives. I get it. You guys all come in and you're like, I've got this figured out. My brain is perfect. And you want to write it the way you want to write it. And you don't want to, be part of a regime or, controlled in that way. That's fine. But I want you to understand that genre doesn't do that. Genre is actually, what genre is it's a way for you to understand your target market, your reader and your audience. Your story is going to not find its audience if you're just writing for everybody. You can't say, oh, I'm just writing a story for everybody, because then your story is basically for nobody, because nobody's going to understand it. So you have to be aware of what your genre is and where it fits with your audience that might be looking for something like you. You also, if you understand your genre, then you can also do the tongue-in-cheek breaking the rules thing, which comes off a lot more exciting and happy and new and fresh with your readers when you tap into that genre. So understand that you're not being restricted by genre. What you're doing is you're opening yourself up to creating a much better story and be a better storyteller by doing that. Can you think of anything else that I need to
other than just, I like what you said about that. It's just to simply define genre. It is a marketing tool. Right. It is a marketing tool that lets your audience know what your book is about. So when we talk about tropes, we're not talking about you putting the same formula in every single book. What we're talking about is things that happen in certain types of book, typically. And readers have come to expect those. So if you call it a certain genre, readers have certain expectations of that genre. And if you lean into those expectations, you can just simply sell more books. It's not a matter of not finding your author voice, not telling your story in a genuine way. It's talking about thinking about the other aspect of it is, how can I tell readers what my book is really about? And that's what genre and tropes are about, is telling readers what your book is really about so that they know before they even open it whether they'll like it or not. I'll give you a quick example. My friend had a book, Vincent Zandri had a book that somebody somehow thought was a completely different genre than it was. Now, the book was called The Remains, and there was a picture of a grave corpse on the front, but somehow this person got the idea that it was Christian fiction. Well, Vince writes much like I do, so Christian fiction would be,
so it would have been very jarring for this person.
It was very jarring for the person. So they left him a 1-star review that said this had all kinds of cuss words. There's no way this is Christian fiction.
Wow.
And we both looked at the review and went, where did you get the idea that this was Christian fiction? So the genre, I mean, he got a 1-star review that was completely unfair of a book that wasn't at all what the person thought it was, but it wasn't marketed as that either. So that stuff just happens to you as authors. So understand, if your reader misunderstands your genre, you can end up with 1-star reviews that have nothing to do with the quality of your work and have everything to do with your marketing. So stupid, kind of, yes. Reality, also yes. So
yeah. I should also point out that if we want to go deeper into storytelling, and we could talk about this at another time, but I do want to touch on this. You have to understand that we as humans are very ancient in our instincts. We are kind of a fickle people, but we do tend to have these instincts and these internal drives that go beyond what we may be able to explain consciously. So my good example of this is, Joseph Campbell, when he wrote the Hero with 1,000 Faces. He, dug into story and the ancient stories of old, including Gilgamesh, and went all the way up through current storytelling and found this pattern of successful stories that resonated with humans and resonated with us and stayed with us and became, hits. And they all had this pattern of this hero that goes on this journey. And he's got all these parts that some include and some don't, there's always, variations of it, but that it talks to us as a core human species. You have to understand that genre is somewhat like that. When you've got a readership that's looking for a specific type of story, like romance, like you said, Troy, we've talked about this before. Romance readers expect a happy ending. If you don't give them that a happy ending, they're going to be angry with you. And those romance readers, they'll eat you for breakfast. So you have to understand that that's you have to know that. And so if you're going to categorize your book as a romance, understand that you better give them those certain aspects of the story that are expected, because it goes against, it's almost like going against someone's religion, and that's their core belief system has just been shifted. Of course, they're going to leave you a rotten review. So be careful with where you're sitting yourself on the bookshelves, because genre is very much like when you walked into a movie store and you went to Blockbuster and you said, oh, I want to go over here to action romance, and you found Princess Bride, you found it over there, or sometimes depending on the manager, you might find it in comedy. It just depended on what you were, who was managing the store. But realize that genre very much works like that. So it can be varied based on like the tropes and things that you include and the way you structure your story, but it's very much a structure that is going to resonate with your readers and help you sell your book.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Very
sense?
much so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about the one time, and I'll just read it real quick. It doesn't matter how good your book is if it's the wrong thing for that reader. So if I walk into a restaurant, order a pizza, and they bring me a hamburger, it doesn't matter how good the hamburger is because I didn't order that. Your reader is coming into your book with genre, with expectations, and if you give them the wrong thing, they're going to be upset, not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't what they ordered. So just be careful about that. Anyway.
Right. So ideas, some things I kind of want to work from a macro and come down to the micro subgenres. So first macro, let's talk about let's first talk about fiction, nonfiction. Those are not genres, guys. That's not genre. Fiction and nonfiction is like your category of book. Okay. We all know that fiction is your made up stories and your nonfiction is your real life stories or self-help books or things like that. So that's where those things categorize. In the fiction, you're going to see different age groups. You're going to see like adults. You're going to see, and I don't even know if I want to say erotic because I don't know if that's really considered a genre, but erotic is kind of like a tone or a heat level of some books. But so you've got heat levels and things in there that kind of like will put you in different categories. But YA also is not a genre. That is an age group that is going to put you in a different category. Gosh, I am tired. Children's books. Children's books also not a genre. That is a category. Thank you. I just said it correctly that time. I'm going to pat myself on the back for
Fantastic.
that.
Yeah,
thank
exactly.
You. Thank
Don't
you
break
so
your
much.
arm. Anyway.
I need those. But anyway, so keep that in mind. So when you come to an editor and you say, my book is a YA, that doesn't tell us much. That just tells us what age group you're targeting. So you got to know your genre a little bit better than that. Okay. So genres, we've got fantasy, we've got mystery, we've got thriller, action adventure, we've got Western, we've got, what other fictions do we've got? We've got
romance, which is where your different heat levels and stuff come into.
Yeah.
Same thing with like mystery and thriller. You've got noir, which is really dark. And then you've got cozy mystery, which is, they have a bakery and, they're trying to find a missing donut or whatever the heck, which we're going to talk about that in a minute.
It's Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote. Things like that.
Yeah, things like that. So we're going to talk about that in a little more detail, but just keep in mind that your genres, they have big categories and then they kind of work their way down into these subgenres. Subgenres, again, it's another way for you to kind of create that funnel and find that perfect reader. So you can absolutely put your book into a fantasy genre and just leave it in a big fantasy genre. In fact, it was funny. I just some woman on YouTube just like 3 months ago posted a video about this. So she was like talking about how, you can absolutely just put your book in a fantasy or a mystery and you can, but again, when I'm going to caution you about this. If you've got to remember, there's 4.4 million books a year published on average up until last year, which I'm sure that's going to be way higher because of the AI surge. But that was the average. That was like kind of like a steady slip of books that came into the market. 4.4 million books, new books a year. About 3.2 million of those are self-published books, and the rest are traditionally published. Okay. Now that's a lot of books. If you don't know how many a million is, I want you to go out there and I want you to just put a million pieces of paper on top of each other and see how tall that is. Okay. That's just paper. And just so you can get an idea, but you have to realize that that's what the algorithm is trying to sift Okay. Not including the old inventory. This is just new inventory, guys. So when you put your book into that pile and you're trying to tell the algorithm, people really want to read my amazing, wonderful, rare, different, unique story that absolutely is going to rock this world, they're not going to be able to understand that with you just putting it in a mystery category when that mystery category has 6,000 other books that just were published that year. So you have to tell the algorithm by sifting it into a subcategory. See, there I am, category. What is wrong with me today? Yeah. Category, to kind of like help it figure out where yours fits, so that when people are Googling, right?
There's another aspect to this too, and that is that if you don't categorize your book into a subcategory or a subgenre, Amazon will do it for you, so will other retailers. They will do it based on the keywords you have entered. They will do it based on your blurb. They will do it based on the look inside part of your book. Well, if that part of your book or those keywords are not correct, you could end up miscategorized. And that miscategorization that we just talked about could end up in really poor reviews and really poor sales, not because your book isn't good, but because it's finding the wrong people. If my noir, short audio series of Solitaire is noir, it's dark, there's cussing, there's murder, there's people beating each other up.
There's no ending.
If that gets categorized as, there's no ending. If that gets categorized as cozy anything, it's really going to hurt me. Why? Because it doesn't fit. Right. So I have to define that for the retailers, or they will define it for me. And if they define it for me, then it's very possible they could make mistakes. They could look at one episode and go, this kind of has a lot of history about Vegas. We'll just put this in history. No, that's not exactly what we're looking at here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you just have to think about the fact that if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it for you, and they may not be as good at it as you are.
Well, especially when it's like you said, it's being done automatically and automated, it's automated. So of course it's going to be awful. So you have to understand the tropes and the genre of your book before you upload it. And if you don't, then come to a professional that can help you with that. But it's important. So I would say that while I can understand why this woman says you can absolutely do that, I will contradict that as being not great advice. You can do it. There's nobody to tell you no, but this is also not going to get you the results that you're going to probably be looking for. So I would say don't do that.
When we look deeper at subgenres too, we'll talk about that, because we'll talk about what you actually need. Like, to make a living as an author, what do you actually need for a fan base? What do you need to make that actually work? And by finding your niche, finding a subgenre where you can rule that world, you can make a living with not that many fans, and not by writing a book every month. You can rule that world. But that takes knowing your market and knowing who your target readers are, which means knowing about subgenres. Otherwise, you're screaming into the void. And that's really, really hard to do. And there are ways to make yourself stand out in that void, but they involve paid ads and lots of money and lots of extra work that you don't have to do.
Right.
So
let's talk about that before we shift into what's trending right now. Let's talk about like how subgenres can actually work for you. So one thing that you should know in terms of like trends that have happened in the past that are shifting often and you need to be aware of. Just FYI, just from by the BISACs, which are your like standard book identification categories. Those categories don't tend to change too much. They're pretty standard. You can find them on Google. If you want to come to me, I can give you a list. I can give you the link to them. They're easy to find. And you can go through and you can choose the standard BISAC that fits you best. However, categories in Amazon don't follow those lines exactly. The BISACs in Amazon, unless you're doing a direct distribution thing through their backwards, not through KDP, through their backroom sales, basically, you're not going to need to know those BISACs on Amazon. You will need to know them for other platforms, but not for Amazon. Amazon uses a different category system. So let me explain. Amazon is a beast. I often describe it as the biggest bully on the playground. And in my course, I actually have a little dinosaur, like a little flying dragon that looks very evil. And he's my Amazon dragon, because he's just an evil little bastard. But anyway, where was it going? Oh yeah. So the categories on Amazon, they change a lot. They change a lot. In fact, they'll change, or they'll ghost a category. They'll combine, they'll get rid of, and they do this frequently. So unless you're in there constantly messing around with Amazon, like someone like me who publishes 20 to 30 books a year, you're not going to see that too often. But one of the rules of thumb I give my clients is check on your metadata for your books about every 6 months, because you might have to move things around a little bit. Otherwise it kind of gets outdated and gets buried. But this is why Troy and I got into the subgenre discussion, is because we noticed some new subgenres that popped up. And they were kind of funny. I was laughing. And then you mentioned the dinosaur porn one that just blew my mind, that there was once a dinosaur porn genre. I'm like blown away by that. But anyway, so keep in mind that like where you put your book, it does very much play into the strategy of you being discovered. And as a publisher, I used to manipulate this quite well, where I could make sure that my clients hit bestseller lists. Now, understand, like I said, the bestseller list that exists there in the world. If you want more information, you can always come to editsbystacey.com or sign up for my course. Like I describe this and I explain this exactly how to get on these different bestseller lists if you really want to get on there. But the Amazon bestseller list is updated hourly, and it's based on sales within that hour. And it's very, very easy to get on a bestseller list on Amazon, but you have to know what you're doing and using those subgenres, those subcategories was how you did that. And so a lot of times people will write to these popular trends in order to hit those lists and be discovered. So before we tap into what's trending right now, I want to give a word of caution about writing to market. So Troy, will you share because I think your advice is awesome on this, about like why you would write to subgenre trends that are up, that are coming up, and why you wouldn't possibly do that. What are your words of wisdom here?
Well, part of it, so part of this is writing to those subgenres can be profitable, and it can get you on those bestseller lists. And the reason is if you can find a group of those fans, a small dedicated group of those fans that once they discover you will read everything that you write, you really only need 200 to 300 of those fans and to write 3-4 books a year, and you're golden, right? You have a career. You can write full time with that type of audience. The caution, though, is you have to get those audiences away from Amazon and away from retailers. And the reason is those retailers may change that category. And I've had more than one person that I know that has written to a specific market, a specific category, and then that category disappears, or Amazon sends it to what we call commonly the erotica dungeon, which means that it's on Amazon, it's categorized properly, but Amazon buries these books in the search results. Okay.
Right.
They've done the same thing with LGBTQ
AI.
titles at various
They're doing it
different
with AI
times.
books too.
They're doing it with AI books. There are all kinds of things, right? So when you wonder if you can check that box that says you used AI, the answer is no, unless you're genuinely creating books entirely with AI. And in that case, absolutely say yes. Just don't expect to sell a lot on Amazon. Have another route to publication, which is a whole other topic for a whole other day.
Yeah.
But so the caution is, because those categories change, that category can suddenly change and go away. And those readers that were finding your books in that cool little category are no longer finding them because that category doesn't exist anymore. So they have to go find you elsewhere. Now, and some of them will, but some of them will not.
Yeah.
So that's just the way that it works.
We talked about this. Amazon is just easy. It makes it easy for people to buy. And so if you find yourself on the uneasy side of Amazon, you can get hurt. So just
it can
make
really
it always
impact your sales. Yeah. It can impact your life. All kinds of things like that. So that's the word of caution, right? But the thing is, it can help you. The other thing that can happen, though, is sometimes those books in those small categories will also get miscategorized in another category. And this is through no fault of your own. It is just something that Amazon does. And you may end up with, all of a sudden, you're getting reviews that you're like, man, these reviews just don't make sense. And the reason is your book has ended up in some other category that Amazon feels like is related to this tiny little category you wanted to be in. But in reality, it's not, and it's not that pleasing to those readers.
I had the coolest experience happen, though. This happened like, it was so crazy, but I had a client, he writes cop thrillers, right? Like procedural, not really procedural, but like cop thrillers, crime thrillers. And he wrote this book and he writes them about a cop that is on tribal land. Okay. So I was like, let's capitalize on this, right? Native Americans have their little subgenres, and it's like he would fit right in there. So we put him in there. He was doing really good. He ended up on the top, he was like the #1 bestseller for like a week, right? He was doing really good. And then he got this crazy review. Are you ready for this? This book is just like Jack Reacher or John Grisham. This is awesome. And what Amazon's little algorithm did is it pulled it out of the Native American subgenre and right into the general thriller general. Category. And oh my gosh, I was like, oh crap, no more. Sorry, you're not going to be a bestseller anymore because you're now in there with like the 17,000 books that are in that category. And it was funny. He still managed to be on the bestseller list. He was like the top 10 for the next, the next 2 weeks. He was on the like bestseller list for like a month, but it was really because he was just making those sales every hour. He was doing really good that way. But ultimately, yeah, it stunk, but yeah, he had no control over that. That was the algorithm taking a review. So be careful with those reviews, guys. You want to make sure your reviews are good and that they're going to be pertinent to your book, because otherwise, it'll mess you up.
Well, and in that particular case, what you do is go in and revise your keywords and just revise them slightly and get Amazon to pop it back in that category. There's a trick to it. There's a trick to it, and it does work. It just creates another challenge for you. Yeah. Right. But in that case, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because getting good keywords in your reviews is something you can't control. But if you get that on your landing page, that like somebody says, this is the most amazing political thriller I've ever read, and your book is in political thriller category, you just cemented to Amazon, this is a political thriller and this is where it belongs. Yeah. And it puts it increases your visibility in those areas. And really that's what it's all about. That's something you can't control, but it's super fun when it happens. It's like, super fun. It's great when it happens. But yeah, it's just one of those things that like, but you can control your own metadata that you put in there, and that's one of the ways that you get things into subgenre. We're not going to talk about how that actually works too much today, because that's a whole different. The details that's a whole
you can
course
get that from
by itself. But
you
anyway,
can come to my course, Imprint Academy.
Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, but yeah. So like, okay, so let's talk about what's trending then. Like we've talked about genre and subgenre. So, some of the categories, like you said, that have kind of disappeared or been ghosted. Do you know of any of those right off the top of your head? That, because I was in there the other day.
Not off the top of my head. It's been a while since I looked at ghosted categories. And let me throw out, I'm going to throw out a couple recommendations anyway as we talk about this, but there's two of them that are really important. And one of them is Publisher Rocket. And you and I both use Publisher Rocket. We know Publisher Rocket. Publisher Rocket keeps track of which categories are ghost categories. And what a ghost category is one that kind of doesn't really exist in Amazon search. It exists on Amazon, but in this kind of invisible way. Right. So nobody really sees that category. So it might be a category that before you really wanted to get into, but now if you get into that category, it literally just buries you in the Amazon rankings because Amazon is the one that controls that and how things are ranked. Right.
Like,
so we don't. It's like a.
It's like a non category, but there's also duplicatable ones or duplicate. Categories that will get lumped together too. And it's always best to go to the source category in those cases, which is why Publisher Rocket's awesome because it will actually tell you what the source category is. It keeps you from getting, like I said, thrown at the bottom of that pile. You don't want to be thrown in the bottom of the pile. But a good example of that is like, there's so just so you know, they stack their categories. So they stack them by genre, subgenre, so they kind of do it like this. But like, for example, a ghost category right now, and this is not something that probably any of you guys write, but it's books, comics and graphic novels, and then reference. So that used to be a category. It's selectable still, believe it or not. But it's selectable in that goes back to graphic novels. Reference is like, it's just old. So they don't have it in there anymore. So yeah, things like that. So just pay attention to, and use the tools. I think Publisher Rocket did recently do a price hike, didn't they? It is lifetime now.
They did. It is. They still have lifetime options. I think they have an annual option now. I'm not sure, but frequently they have sales. So it's always good to watch the sales if you can get some kind of a lifetime deal on sale, especially.
So it's $199 one time lifetime access. Lifetime. Yeah. So, which is not bad. Like if you're
worth it, totally worth it.
Totally worth
it.
He's also
kind of
got
regardless
loads
of how many books you publish.
Right. Yeah. And Dave Cheson's the founder. He's got lots of like learning tools and teaching, so he teaches you how to use it. He's really a great resource. So I highly recommend Publisher Rocket. Okay. Yep. So anyway, what are some of these, where are we at with subgenre trends? Do you want to bring up the one we found?
Which one? No, you bring that up.
The Vici.
Oh yeah, the Vici. Which is super interesting. And what's interesting is there's not a lot of data on it yet. Nobody's done really like a super detailed analysis of it because it's kind of an emerging subgenre type thing. Yep. But sometimes, especially if your fiction is close to that anyway, diving into those type of categories is a really great idea. And Vici is essentially virus science fiction.
Yeah. It's
so like some kind of virus. So there's a lot that could lump into that category. We'll talk about that in a minute too, how like when you talk about these subgenres, because we're going to look at one. I got some data from K-lytics. I'm just going to show us so we can look at one of them and look at the different nuances that are within that. But there's always nuances within it. So you think about Vici, right? Virus science fiction, but you could have zombies in space, because you could have a zombie virus in space. You could
Yeah.
have a virus that's confined to a spaceship that's traveling through between the stars. You could have virus that's contained to a planet. You could have a virus that's spreading throughout the galaxy. You could have, there's all kinds of different variations that you could have, from steampunk type sci-fi to epic sci-fi to military sci-fi, a virus spreading that's causing a war, to zombie sci-fi, to sci-fi romance where there's a couple trying to fight the virus together, or something
Yeah.
along that line. So there's
It's
a
like,
million ways that you can
it's not
go
even
into that
really,
category.
it's not even just virus, like transhumanism is included in there, and cybernetics and augmentation. Like, these are amazing. Like, to think about that, the whole idea of the humans trying to like transcend biological limits that we have. Like, that is so cool. But yeah, that would fit into this new subgenre. So yeah, kind of interesting. They're throwing out there that like even the Giver might touch on something. I mean, Giver by Lois Lowry could possibly even touch on this subgenre had she decided to put it in there. But that kind of thing, Frankenstein might even fit into there, because of, the fact that we're transcending human limits. We're, building on this, new biological, entity or being, and we're building it from dead parts, yeah, but like that's the beautiful thing about subgenres, isn't it? Is that you can take your story and you can say, actually, it kind of does fit in there, and I can capitalize on this little trend that's happening.
Exactly.
And that's what we want you to do, is think about that.
Oh yeah. And some things and so this is the other thing about subgenres, is think about this, is all you have to do in some cases is change one little thing about your book. You're not changing the story. You're changing one little trope or inserting one little thing into your story. Or like in the case of bi-sci, basically you may be creating a story with similar elements anyway, and you're just choosing that as one of the categories where you put it. And because there's so limited a number of titles compared to the number of searches in that category, you can rise to the top of that very quickly. In some ways, in publishing, you would like to be a big fish in a small pond, because there's money to be made in that pond. And this whole topic today is really ironic, because I was just having another conversation about the economics of publishing and how we shouldn't call it the creator economy, because it shouldn't all be about money. It should be about alignment and other things, which is really interesting. It should be, but you don't have to give that up in order to fit into these subgenres. In order to write to market, you don't have to create some whole new pen name and whole new universe. You just have to pay attention to the trends and ride them with the fiction that you already have. So,
right.
Anyway,
some others that I don't know. You want to tell me if you've heard of any of these old timey animal books? That's an up and comer. Paint drips. Don't have a clue on that, but that's kind of like the story, the trends that are happening on some story, on some novel covers, short story collections. I will say this is a trend that's kind of been ongoing for a while, is shorter and shorter word counts on novels. So pay attention to that. People are becoming less and less consumed with quantity. Audible books, I don't think this is the trend, but with print in particular, it does seem like people are like leaning towards shorter word counts. So be careful of your word counts. Let's see, entangled reincarnations. Space race, of course, with the Mars thing. That could be a thing. Stranger than fiction. Of course, you've always got the true crime stuff going on. Sympathy for the devil seems to be coming up a lot. Strange appetites.
Yeah, that's kind of that's up and coming.
Stomach.
Noir is making a comeback.
Yeah.
Noir and kind of the old pulp fiction style of things is making a comeback. There's a few of us that are deliberately riding that trend and going to short story collections that are based on noir, because that's a lot of what it was back then. They were what we called pulp magazines.
Pulp magazines.
And you'd write a short, punchy 5,000 word story, and there'd be 15 of them in the magazine, and you'd pull that thing up and devour it, and you'd never look at it again. But it's got those strong, punchy stories that are more like the dark fiction, the dark side of the world type of things. And in a world where we're getting a lot of artificial stories and sanitized stuff of, oh, I got to be careful, I can't offend anybody. These stories that we go, hey, you're probably going to be offended and too freaking bad, and you produce it anyway. There's people that are just there that are hungry for that because they want to read something real. So that's another one that's making a comeback. And there's all kinds of subcategories within that one too. So it's kind of wild.
That is wild. Some other ones, golems, books with golems in them. Waterworld with global warming and our rising oceans. People are writing a lot more about that kind of stuff, which is interesting because anytime anyone says anything about Waterworld, I see Kevin Costner jumping off of a boat and some weird fishnet stuff.
Strange appetites comes back around anyway.
And then this one's interesting. Appalachian speculation. Have you heard about this? It says
I haven't heard about that, but it totally makes sense.
Bog bodies, mysterious moss, android features. Wow, interesting. I guess nature taking over the human race. Kind of like almost feels like Matrix, only with nature instead of machines. You know, kind of interesting. But the other one we saw, what was the other one that we saw the other day? It wasn't Visai, it was something else that we talked about. Do you remember it? Do you remember which one it was?
I don't remember it.
Let me see.
In the meantime, romances are still big. Hockey romance, football romance, soccer romance, all of it is.
You brought it up. Cozy kink.
Oh, cozy kink. We're going to talk about cozy in a minute too, because I'm going to show you some cozy fantasy stuff. But cozy kink is super interesting.
This one, you and I both had like really kind of weird reactions to it. I immediately went, how in that is such a juxtaposition in two genres that should not be in the same genre. Like they were, okay. So cozy kink, for everybody. Remember, Troy earlier said cozy is like very clean. Usually it's like, especially in cozy mystery, it's like the amateur detective solving a crime. It's very
happens off screen, no violence,
right? It's just
little
very
violence, I guess you'd say. Yeah.
It's just a very it's almost like what some would consider a light read, because it's just not really really gritty or anything. The thing about cozy is that's the thing. Cozy romance, cozy mystery. They're just very light and easy and casual. Anybody could pick them up. Kink is actually introducing an erotic bedroom scene to the cozy mystery or the cozy genre, which, like, again, goes against cozy in my opinion. So this is interesting.
Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of. But when I was doing research before we did this, and because I'm going to show you a cozy fantasy in a minute category and what that breakdown looks like. But what cozy generally is, and I hadn't really thought of it this way, but cozy, the stakes are what is lower. The stakes are milder. So for cozy kink, what I'm picturing is that the stakes in the story are lower, but the kink is still a part of the, so this isn't 50 Shades of Grey.
No.
This is 50 Shades of, hey, what's up? It's just different, right? It's just cute. Different, but it still has that kink in there, but it doesn't have the exterior stakes in the plot and the story outside of the erotic sex scenes. That's what I'm picturing, because that's kind of what cozy is doing is, your stakes are much lower. Instead of an epic war in fantasy, you're trying to figure out how to make the harvest better this year. It's so It is like
Okay.
what you're talking about. It's like a light read. The stakes are not, and so for me, like I don't necessarily enjoy fiction like that because I like the stakes to be high and
Me
make,
too.
you know, ordinary people do extraordinary things because the stakes are so high that they're forced to. However, there are those people that like the cozy mystery where the stakes aren't nearly as high.
I will
You
also
know,
say this though, but I
so
will give a word of caution for those of you who like to read cozy. If this is the trend that's happening, I would say be careful on picking them up because you're not going to get that safe bet anymore. Because I will say that I do have friends that will read cozy specifically because they believe they're getting a clean book. So
well, I
be
have a
careful.
feeling cozy kink will still be categorized in some kind of adult or erotic manner.
Okay.
If the authors do not do that, they will be that's going to be a foolish decision. And I also think that those books are going to struggle to succeed on Amazon because of the way Amazon is treating certain types of fiction. So you're
Right.
going to have other avenues for that. Now there are plenty of other avenues. There's Ream, there's Royal Road, there's Patreon, there's Substack. There's a million ways to sell your fiction nowadays. Don't worry about it. There's still ways to do it. But just understand if you want to write something like that, understand your market and understand where you need to go to find those readers.
Right.
Anyway, because it's not as simple as it seems.
I will also let you know that Draft Digital yesterday, I noticed they added a clarification question to their publishing questions and setup. You used to go in there and there was two like radio buttons that you could select for if the content was suitable for children or not. And usually if you selected not, you just moved on. If you had, like erotic scenes or open bedroom scenes, you would select that. You would want to make sure that your kids under the age of 18 weren't being subjected to that kind of stuff. But anyway, yesterday I noticed when I published a book, that button, when I clicked it, it had a supplemental question to come up. And it was asking if the material included bestiality, sex slavery, rape in any way, consensual sex of any kind, non-consensual sex or, whatever. So there were like I think it was more like 5 or 6 little, sub questions. And just FYI, if your book doesn't have any of those things, just leave it blank and click that you certify you're answering truthfully. But that's basically it. I think they're trying to make sure that there's a distinction, and again, to protect readers from being triggered from any kind of sensitive situations or subjects that might come up in books. So just be aware that the publishing companies or the aggregators especially are trying to make sure that your books, one, probably are categorized correctly, and 2, that they're protecting their readers from being, triggered unnecessarily.
Well, aggregators, especially, what they're doing is they're responding to what retailers are asking from them.
Right.
So retailers are telling them, we want to know this information about these books just to make sure that we're not presenting it as something that it's not.
Right.
So they're responding to what retailers are asking for. Don't worry about it. Just be truthful about what it is you're doing with your book.
Exactly. Just be truthful. Exactly. Anyway. So yeah. That's just a word of caution on that. But show us what you've got, Troy. I'm kind of interested in what you came up with.
Let me show you something. So anyway, I wrote an article. I will tell you, I wrote an article for Nink magazine, which is a professional author magazine. And in it, I talked about the cozy genre because what we're really talking about was author pivots. Like how often have you had to pivot genre because suddenly your genre, your subgenre or whatever wasn't selling? And how often have you had to pivot genre? And I talked about this trend towards cozy fantasy. Okay. And at that same time, K-lytics, which is another tool that I recommend besides Publisher Rocket, and it's interesting because in some ways the two consider themselves competitors. I don't consider them competitors, right? I talk about them in the same because I use them both. Okay. So, and Alex of K-lytics, he had just done this study on cozy fantasy. And so he sent me this study right after he read the article. He's also a member of NINC, and he's in there with me all the time. But anyway, so he sent me this study that they did on cozy fantasy. And the reason is because cozy fantasy has experienced this huge jump recently, because cozy in general has been on an upward trend for like 10 years. But cozy fantasy is emerging as something that's a little bit different. So, first of all, we just look at the definition. Cozy fantasy is a subgenre that creates a feel-good, comforting, heartwarming, light-hearted reading experience. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's a light read.
Right.
So it's gentle magic, whimsical fantasy, low stakes. Characters are after what they're after is peace, belonging, like family and friendship, personal growth, or simple joys of everyday life. I want to get a new stallion.
What this is. You know what this is? It's Tinkerbell's little thing in Disney. It was her little Tinkerbell series.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's no epic battles. There's no high stakes drama. There's just slice of life moments, minor challenges, creative problem solvings. You got empathy, tolerance, kindness. It's all very, warm hug. My little pony. Yeah. It's those type of things. But what's interesting about it is there's all kinds of subgenres within this as well. And we're not going to go through all this because this is a 110-page report. There's a huge video that goes with it and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm going to do is use this as an example of what you can do when you dive into a subgenre. So first of all, you got to figure out what it is. You make the definition. Okay. Now, and then, so cozy fantasy is like Lord of the Rings, but you never leave the Shire. Just, we're having a fun little time in the Shire. I've got to get a few pence for my next, beer or whatever. Okay. Yeah. So there's defining elements that define it. And this is interesting. So when you get somebody like this that does research, what they're doing is they're looking at the books that are a part of this genre right now, that people categorize this way right now, and they're going to give you examples. Like Legends and Lattes is actually one that's really well known, right? So first of all, this is why I highly recommend K-lytics. I also recommend them because sometimes with Publisher Rocket, you can get a snapshot that particular day, that genre or a particular book in that genre is doing really well. Maybe they got a BookBub deal or something like that. But K-lytics instead looks at trends, like long-term trends. So they look at books for a minimum of 90 days before they and look at what the rankings are and stuff like that. So anyway, we're going to skip all that because we're going to go down to first of all, like what cozy fantasy is. So there's all kinds of genres within cozy fantasy. All of these different things that are listed on this page all fall into cozy fantasy. So if you're already writing kind of a lighthearted fantasy, you may already be able to categorize your books in this area. So that's one of the things about subgenres is subgenres have subgenres of the subgenres. Right. So you could have, cozy time travel and portal fantasy, and you could be the most popular author in that category because maybe there's only 400 people that ever search for that on Amazon.
Wow.
But those 400 people are going to find you because there's probably only 15 to, 20 to 50 books that are even available in time travel and portal fantasy. So one of the things that you look at when you look at trends is, so you're looking at the long-term view. Let me see if I can find this chart. Okay. This is book supply versus interest. So the red is search results. The blue is the number of books available.
Wow. Look at that.
So what this means is
high demand.
Almost twice as many people are searching for this category as there are books in the category.
Nice.
So as an author, if you got a book that already fits in this category, you can change just one thing about your book and nose it into the cozy fantasy category. Awesome. So if you can add some kind of fantasy type vibe to your cozy mystery that you're writing already, you don't have to change a thing about the things that you love about the genre that you're writing. All you have to do is introduce one small other element, and suddenly you're in a category where there are readers hungry for what you're writing. Okay. So that's what these reports do. They also go through things like looking at covers.
Oh, wow.
So like the top 100 covers and what exactly these covers look like. And like I say, these reports, so the reports themselves are usually only about $40 for this whole report. Or you can be a subscriber to K-lytics and then you get all kinds of reports.
Very nice.
And then you get their one big annual report that covers every single genre. That thing's like a monster, like 400 pages, and it's got everything in there. But you can start to look at, what do covers look like and what covers are selling.
Right.
These type of covers, 23% of the covers have ornamental and text-based, and that is 30% of the top 500 royalties is in those covers right there.
Wow. That's really cool.
So then you look at Symbol and Glow over here. Well, that's only 7% of the top 500 books have that kind of cover, and only 6% of the royalties.
Wow. See, this is very valuable information.
So it gives you super detailed, super valuable information. And primarily as an author, what it gives you is an insight into if you want to get your book into this subcategory, well, what cover style would I go with? Well, I'd probably go with ornamental and text-based, even though more of them have cartoon, comic, gaming type covers. That's only 18% of the money. I want to be here.
Right.
I might want to be here, depending upon the subgenre within cozy fantasy. Right. But instead of guessing, I'm looking at data on these subgenres and going, not only is cozy fantasy hot, but this is exactly what's hot about cozy fantasy.
Right.
So we're not playing the guessing game.
We're not paid by K-lytics to be talking about this. We're just sharing tools.
Well, and this is the thing. So me personally, like I am friends with Alex. He actually sent me a message on Facebook about this thing when it came out, right? Like I'm friends with Dave Chesson. I know most of his staff. I think he's a great guy. He does some fantastic things for authors. I'm not paid by either one of them for mentioning this, for mentioning their products. If you go sign up today for any of those things, I don't get a dime. And the truth is, I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me because what I want to do is provide you as a reader with as an author with as much information as possible.
Good information, right?
And good information and like sources for good information. Because you might say, well, I think this is an up and coming category, but what do I really know about Vicide? Well, go and get the K-lytics science fiction report that goes through all the different genres within science fiction and the subgenres and figure it out. Figure out where you belong. Figure it out by what you love to write, too. Don't just go write cozy fantasy. You go, oh, that's hot right now. And Troy says, if I make this kind of cover, I'll make this kind of money. No, it's not going to happen for you. But anyway, and then we go through where all the different types of all the different categories of fiction. We go through the averages, average Amazon sales rank. And that's what we're talking about. Average Amazon rank over 90 days so that you get a more cohesive data. And there's all kinds of things as well. I'm not going to go into all these things, mainly because, first of all, this is a paid report. So if you want all the details of it, go pay for it because that's how Alex makes his living. But also, I don't have time in this. He has a video that goes over all of this as a part of when you purchase this. You don't just get this report and he goes, good luck. But you get an actual video where him and his staff go through what this actually looks like. But this is just an example of a subgenre that's hot enough coming up that they took the time to go, all right, let's go look at this category and see what's happening there. And they give you solid data about what's going on there so that you know what to do if you want to put your books in this category. So anyway, all of that being said, just to say that just seeing that something is potentially hot on Amazon isn't enough to change your publishing plan for your life, right? Continue to write the things that you love and that you like, but figure out what's happening for real in those subcategories. Look at the covers and go, what cover changes do I need to make? Look at what's happening. There's pricing things that are in those reports too. How are these things priced traditionally and self-published? And, price yourself somewhere in the middle. Get yourself all the data that you need because you can be successful with these little categories, but it requires that you think probably a little bit differently than the way you normally think of
Again,
when you're
very,
talking about writing to market.
right. Yeah. And you got to remember, this is all the kind of stuff that you're looking at when you take off your creative hat and you put on your authorpreneur hat, because, too many authors have this tendency to stick in, well, this is my passion and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to bend. I'm going to die on this hill, and what happens is
you will.
They get, they get very discouraged when their book dies on the hill. So, if you want your book to actually reach readers and get into the hands of people who want to say, yes, I love this book and you've changed my life, then you need to do some extra work. So there's no easy button on this. There's easy buttons when you use all these tools that we're sharing, but know that, yes, it does require some brain power. You have to kind of use your brain. So anyway,
even if you use these tools, there's definitely some human engagement that's involved in you going in and looking at your book, because we can, Publisher Rocket can look at the trends and and K-lytics can look at the trends and what's happening, and Publisher Rocket can help you find the right keywords, but they can't help you find the right keywords for your book unless you give it the right information. Exactly. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. That needs to know something about your book, which means you need to know something about your book in order to make use of these tools the most effective way.
Exactly. So my final word on subgenre is just pay attention. Don't fight against the machine. The machine is there to help you find your readers. And really, subgenre is just a good way for you to, get creative. I mean, when I learn about all these little subgenres, it's kind of opens my brain up to go, oh, especially when you were saying all you have to do is change one little element. Goodness, you could just change the setting and think about the type of mischief you can get your characters in just from being in a world where, there are sinkholes once in a while that open up and suck you into an underworld. That's, that's kind of cool. Just fun stuff like that.
Just imagine as an author that, before you even start writing the book, that there's a market for it and there's a place that you can sell it.
Yeah.
And how different that would make you feel, and how much anxiety that could take away from you, how different that would make you feel about your author career. That makes you feel like there's maybe some hope there. There's maybe some things that I can do to actually sell books. Absolutely there are.
Yeah, so, you're not a lone freak.
It's freedom. It's freedom.
You're not a freedom. Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, you are, but you're among fellow freaks.
But you're among fellow freaks. That's the thing.
Which makes it okay. That makes it okay.
We're all okay. Anyway, Troy and I we're so happy to give you guys this information. We would love to hear from you. And if you want to have us touch on a topic that maybe you would like to know more about, hit us up in the comments and let us know. We would love to know what you guys are interested in hearing us touch on. Next week, we will be working on, let me look at my schedule here and see what we're going to be doing next week. It looks like we're going to be talking about, what did I put down? Did I not put a topic next week? I didn't put a topic next week. Oh, interesting.
Oh my goodness.
No, I did. I lied. Writing effective newsletters.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about that. That's going to be super fun.
We can make it fun.
But no, it is going to be fun. I'm not being sarcastic. Newsletters can be super fun and creative. Also, we should mention that we are going to start having some tool demos. We're going to have some people come in and showcase different kinds of software that can help you in different aspects of your writing career.
I'm really excited about
We have one coming up with Book Blaster towards the end of April. We're probably going to set something up with Pro Writing Aid relatively soon because they've made some recent changes to the software and have some really cool plans. So I'd love to bring Tom in to give us some insight into what's happening with those. And we'll talk about those. Pro Writing Aid is personally one of my favorite tools in the revision process primarily.
Yeah, me too.
But it can also help you a little bit in the writing process. So there's some really cool things that you can do there. So we'll talk about those things. We'll kind of bring on, a little more stuff of like maybe some live webinars and stuff where you guys can actually see some of the tools that we use. So we say, hey, we're going to put our money where our mouth is and tell you these are the things we use. This is why. And maybe you want to try them. Maybe you don't. If you don't, no big deal. Everybody to each their own. But we like to give you the opportunity of knowing, just like we talked about today, the different tools that we use when we're doing market research that can be equally valuable to you.
I love it. I'm so excited about this stuff, but yeah. All right. Well, everybody, again, like, follow, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions for us, put them in the comments. Tell us we stink. Tell us we don't stink. We'd love to hear from you. And Troy, we're going to sign out and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you, everybody.